And welcome back to the Primetime Power Show right here live on Primetime Power Radio. Featured on the TuneIn and Radio Line apps. Just search for Primetime Power Radio. Also streaming on PrimetimePowerShow.com as well as PrimetimePowerRadio.com. Tonight, we're going to start the segment off Uplift Today. We have a special guest interview on the Primetime Power line. Tonight, we have attorney Quincy E. Booth from the Booth firm. He's a native Philadelphian, and we're glad to have him on the program tonight. Quincy, thank you for joining us on the Primetime Power Show tonight.
Thanks for having me, Derek.
Thank you so much. So, Quincy, before we start off, I know that you're a native Philadelphian, and one of the things I always like to ask is the beginnings and how you got started and what you're doing right now. So, what inspired you to become a licensed attorney? Was there a moment in your life that was a leading force to pursue you down this particular path?
Thanks, Derek, for the question. I will start off by telling you that I'm from the Winfield area in West Philadelphia. I attended Penn Memorial Baptist Church. On one hand, it's my mom's church, and African Episcopal Church of St. Thomas, the historic St. Thomas. That was my father's church. And in both church environments growing up, my parents made sure that I got into oratorical contests, speakers contests, that they were always influencing me to go up and shake people's hands and to really just make myself known to everyone. They used to call me a young politician, although I have no interest in politics. But because of that, I became really fascinated with just talking to people, hearing people's stories, speaking in front of people, educating people, and that was really the precipice of first, feeling like I could become someone that could call themselves an advocate. I actually participated in several speakers contests, and that gave me the excitement and the confidence to stand before people and really communicate a message. And I think that as a lawyer, that's one of the first skill set that you need to have. So at a very young age, I developed those skills, and they've carried through to this day.
That's awesome. So one of the things, Quincy, I'm always curious about as a speaker, was that like a natural gift that you had, or was it one of those things where you kind of had to work yourself up to being a very confident, polished speaker?
It runs in the family. I won't get into too much of a family history, but the patriarch of our family, Samuel DeWitt Proctor, was someone who went to school with Martin Luther King, taught Jesse Jackson, North Carolina A&T, and so many more accolades. I mean, he was selected by John F. Kennedy to lead the Peace Corps in Nigeria in 1962, and from the earliest that I can remember, my mom and my grandmother inculcated me with the confidence that I came from that type of lineage, that people in our family were, pillars of the community and people that, the community could look to for guidance. So I think that, that's the baseline. And also, one of my earliest memories is delivering the I Have a Dream speech, Martin Luther King's speech, to my church when I was about 4 years old. So I can't tell you whether or not it was innate. It's just my oldest memory it involves speaking in front of people. So I think it may have been natural, yes.
No, that's an awesome foundation, and that's wonderful that it carried over even to where you are right now. So speaking about where you are as an attorney, let's talk about some of the beginnings prior to that. Share with us the experience of going to law school in the first place, getting all of that knowledge that you need, building your skill up to become a lawyer that you can then say, hey, I have what it takes to effectively be able to serve people.
Sure. So I think I have to start with a few years before law school. For 5 years after graduating from Drexel University here in Philadelphia, I was a corporate salesperson at AT&T. Obviously, everyone knows what AT&T is. It's a Fortune 10 company, the largest telecommunications company. I had territories in Silicon Valley, Atlanta, and the greater DC area. And I was responsible for growing the book of business, which meant consultative selling. It meant understanding people's pain points and how to address them. And I think that created a foundation for the client relationship management that goes into being an attorney. I mean, what I do is I represent people. So in order to effectively represent someone, I have to understand exactly what our goal is, what their pain points are, and obviously turn around and on my own understand what legal terrain we have to navigate. So being a corporate salesperson really helped me develop some of the baseline skills. Now, when I went to law school, there was an entirely new, I guess, area of skills that I had to develop, which was researching and legal writing, and really understanding how to formulate a legal argument.
Mm-hmm.
And Derek, that was tough. I mean, it's not natural the way that speaking in front of people might be natural.
Right.
Understanding and developing the legal aptitude to become someone else's representative is totally different, because writing to the court and writing to clients, when you read your written product, it looks a lot different than, say, a speech that you've written for church or an email that you've written to clients in corporate America. So that took a while. Some people it clicks. The first few months. For me, I struggled through the first year, not necessarily academically, but behind closed doors to really, and I really had to grind to develop that skill set. That being said, once you develop it, it's really applicable to a lot of areas of law, which, I don't want to jump the gun, but I do practice several areas of law, and I really attribute the grind that first year of law school to that. Some people go into law school knowing, hey, look, I want to be a bankruptcy lawyer, or I want to be a corporate attorney. Mm-hmm. I specifically thought that I wanted to stay far and far away from the court system, from being a trial lawyer. Mm-hmm. Turns out that's exactly what I am today, which, if I was going to tell anybody a lesson, don't commit yourself too hard, too steadfastly to one area, because, life is about being adaptable and being, able to experience change. So I'm grateful that I can wear so many different hats now because of putting in the work early on in law school. And then throughout law school, you start to refine and hone those skills. For me, I participated in mock trial. I was a Marshall Brennan Constitutional Literacy Fellow, where we went into the Homestead area in Pittsburgh. By the way, I attended University of Pittsburgh School of Law in the western part of our state. And Homestead was a predominantly African-American community. I taught kids at one of the high schools about constitutional literacy, specifically, issues around student rights as it pertained to the Constitution. A lot of Fourth Amendment search and seizure stuff as it applies to students. And I also helped them, kind of in stride with my background, prepare for an oratorical competition, a national moot court competition. So that was one of the ways that I both gave back to the community in school and refined and honed my own skills. So I hope that answers the question.
Oh, absolutely. Very thorough answer, Quincy. I appreciate that. So one of the things that I hear personally, you didn't have any problem or any issue hearing your calling, how you were supposed to be led. And it sounded like you really just took leaps and you really went forth in the way that you were supposed to be guided. Like, you really understood what your journey and destiny path was. Is that kind of fair to what I'm hearing from you?
I would say it's mostly correct. I mean, look, I, like a lot of other people that go to law school or med school or some other professional school, had to consider going into debt. I left a pretty good job in corporate America on the whim that my calling was to do something other than, be a corporate salesperson. Despite the fact that I was helping people and, making money, it wasn't fulfilling.
So interesting that, Quincy, that you mentioned that. So you didn't have a traditional leap from going to just a bachelor's degree right into law school. You actually went into the working world, corporate America, and then later on you transitioned and decided, hey, I want to be a lawyer. Let me go back to school. Let me get what I need and equip myself so I can be just that.
Correct. And I would suggest to anyone listening, anyone who's young or considering, what they're going to do after college, working in the corporate sector was probably one of the best things that could have happened for me prior to going to law school, because I had my head on straight when I got to school. I was already a professional for all intents and purposes. And when it comes to what I mentioned earlier, grinding at school and understanding the work ethic that's required, it was easier for me than some of my peers, not all. Everyone that goes to law school is for the most part very serious, but it was easier for me than some of my peers to kind of just hit the ground running when it came to the workload that is, I think, unparalleled in law school,
right,
to any other type of schooling. There's a ton of reading, a ton of self-motivation that's required, and like I said, you got to have a strong work ethic. So being a professional for 5 years really helped out with that.
Right, getting that real world experiencing and understanding and knowing what it is, and then being able to embrace all the things that you picked up from it. Yeah, I can see how that would definitely be an asset to you moving forward, transitioning to becoming a lawyer. So, question in regards to that transition, that switch, if you want to call it. What made you say, hey, the corporate America gig is, I'm doing well, I'm thriving as a professional, but there's more to what I want to do? What made you go from corporate America to the Booth firm?
I'll first start off with, it wasn't exactly corporate America to the Booth firm. There's been some stops along the road.
Okay.
So, long story short, I wasn't fulfilled. I didn't feel like I was being intellectually nourished as much as I wanted to be. When I was in corporate America, and I'm not knocking corporate America. It's just that, some people, a lot of people go to grad school because they want more education. And I can tell you, Derek, there is no education like a legal education. So many people, including many people in our community, don't understand their rights. They don't understand even how to go about thinking about what rights are important, on any given day.
Right.
A lot of people think about criminal law, right? What are my rights when I get stopped by a police?
After the fact, right.
Okay.
Right. Reactive, right.
And that's like, half or less than half. I would say it's actually a small fraction of the law at large. Now, whether the media wants you to believe that it's the part of the law that our people encounter the most is a separate story. I would suggest that it's not, right? People are tenants and have potential landlord-tenant issues, so property law every day, no matter what race or creed you are. People are employed, right? So there's employer-employee law, labor law. People formulate businesses.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
And you need to understand your legal rights or some legal issues surrounding the formation and operation of your business. And people are involved in accidents every single day and don't know the first place to go. And I'd suggest that you call the Booth firm if you are involved in an accident. But when it comes to their personal injury rights, which is called tort law. So, fortunately, I've had the ability to put my hand and represent people in all of the areas I just mentioned. But, our people and really all people need to understand that it's not about civics, but understanding that every move you make, everything you do on a daily basis is going to intersect with some part of the law. Doesn't mean that I'm not telling people to think about being litigious. Don't go out there thinking that you have, that you're going to be able to sue everybody that makes you feel upset or that you're disappointed with. But I would suggest that you call us at the Booth firm to understand what your legal rights may be, or really just for a free consultation to understand, what your options are. No matter how silly you think your issue is, or no matter how much you believe that you've been harmed, one way or the other, we're going to have an answer for you and help guide you. And that's what we do every day. Yeah,
absolutely. And always seeking that knowledge and gaining that wisdom, that's always going to be an asset, and it's going to be a help and a support to you. So speaking of that, in regards to the practice areas, let's jump into that a bit, Quincy, in relation to what the Booth firm offers. What would you consider the heaviest concentration? I see that you do motor vehicle accidents, construction accidents, dangerous products, medical malpractice, premises liability, liquor liability, estate planning and administration. What would you say as of, let's recap a little bit, 2020, what was the core practice areas where you felt like you had to provide and support the most?
Yeah, so I would say that it's a tough question because, I don't want to discourage any of the listeners from contacting the Booth firm to discuss any area of law that they have a need. However, most of what we've done in the past has revolved around catastrophic personal injury, and I say catastrophic, it doesn't have to be involving life or limb, but we've represented victims and injured people from broken bones, minor soft tissue injuries, all the way to the loss of life. So an anecdotal reference would be the building collapse case, the Salvation Army building that collapsed in 2013.
That. Yep.
I personally worked on that case quite a bit, and we represented. I wasn't at the Booth firm at the time, but the firm that I was at represented 7 people, including a fatality, and that was an amazing experience for me to be able to sit there across the table from the mother of a dead person who perished in that collapse, and 6 other catastrophically injured people, and usher them through what was a very long trial and an even longer legal process and lawsuit. That helped me understand construction accident law. It helped me understand wrongful death law. It also opened the door for me to understand, what I reference when I say estate administration and planning, because a lot of people, everyone knows somebody that's passed, and everyone ultimately will know somebody that's passed. If you don't yet, everyone has a family member who's going to transition. And when talking about our community specifically, we don't think enough ahead when it comes to planning. So I'm helping people every day with their estate administration. What that means is drafting wills, and not just drafting wills, but consultatively guiding someone through the process of understanding how to dispose of their property, who it's going to go to, what the tax implications are, how potentially to avoid those tax implications. And the reason why personal injury and estate administration intersect so well is because, like I said, sometimes I'm representing someone who's the wife, son, mother, father of someone else who has perished in a wrongful death accident, and a wrongful death lawsuit arises out of it, and that requires understanding on the other side of things, the estate, how to interact with the Register of Wills, the Department of Estate and Inheritance Tax in Pennsylvania, Department of Revenue, and we really just handle things soup to nuts for people. So our goal is always to just relieve you from any headaches that might happen further down the road, and to take that burden off of your plate.
Awesome. So some of the practice areas, and I know the core of what we just talked about was under construction accidents. Just for our audience, if you could just give a general description of what motor vehicle accidents, what that entails, dangerous products, and the other practice areas that you focus on.
Sure. So your motor vehicle accident is probably the most common. And I'll give you an anecdotal reference. I represent someone who was rear-ended on Baltimore Pike recently. She's 8 months pregnant. Her belly hit the steering wheel.
Oh, wow.
And she has required extensive treatment.
Yeah.
And what I mean by treatment is medical treatment, right? So, you get involved in an accident, the Booth firm's going to help you get the best medical care. Then we're going to turn around and represent you to the insurance company that represents the person who hurt you. So if someone is in a car and causes you harm, whether you're a pedestrian or another motorist, you have rights. That's why we have car insurance, right? And, sometimes the motor vehicle accident is involving a truck or a commercial vehicle. And people don't understand automatically that means there's likely more money to go out and get on your behalf.
Yeah.
To help you with, what's called damages. Damages are, the general pain and suffering that you experience. Like I said, my one client, has a lot of pain and suffering. Not only physical, but emotional. I mean, you can imagine being 8 months pregnant and someone causing unexpected, unwanted, premature contractions, you've got to go start treating a lot more with the doctor than you initially had planned.
Yep.
You've got emergency response team bills, ambulance bills. You might miss work, and all of that is the type of damage that you can be compensated for.
Yeah, even the mental aspect of it. I mean, that's the other part.
Right, and Derek, don't get me wrong. What people need to understand is if you get tapped in the back of your car and nothing happens to you,
mm-hmm.
you don't have a case, okay?
Yeah.
If you are going to suffer some type of damage, you have a case.
Absolutely.
Okay? And, most auto policies are $15,000. Right. And I want to take this opportunity quickly to educate the listeners about why it's important to understand what your auto policy is. When you get in an accident, you're thinking, oh, the other driver has X amount of money. But what a lot of people don't understand is there's something called underinsured and
mm-hmm.
uninsured motorist coverage.
Yes,
and that's with your auto policy. That helps you get money from your insurance company when the other driver doesn't have enough.
Right.
And trust me,
it happens quite a bit. I can personally attest to that, Quincy. You're absolutely right on that.
It's very frequent.
Yes, it is.
That I represent someone that has damages that exceed the responsible driver's auto policy limits. So, everyone really needs to just bite that bullet and pay the $15 to $30 more a month to make sure that you've got that extra
coverage,
$30,000 potentially. Or more. I would even go as far as to suggest getting a policy that has $100,000 in underinsured.
Yeah, that is an excellent tip, because so many times we base it off of the quote. Now, obviously, it's budget considerations that we have to factor. We understand that, but if you're able to, you definitely want to do that upgrade, because it's going to come in handy when you need it the most. So that's a great tip. Yeah.
Another area is premises liability. Right. This is very simple. If you're on someone else's property and you get hurt because of a dangerous condition that the property owner, knew about, or they should have known about. And when I say should have known, I mean they should have taken reasonable steps to make sure that their property didn't have a dangerous condition.
Yep.
When I walk outside of my house, if there's a hole, on the sidewalk in front of my property that I own, I'm going to barricade it. I'm going to make sure that everyone that could potentially walk by that area avoids that pothole or that hole, right? If you're in Wawa and you slip and fall and you tear a ligament in your knee, Wawa's responsible, because they should know that that there's a dangerous condition. And
mm-hmm.
I'm not singling out Wawa. Any type of establishment or property that has what's called business invitees, is required to make sure and guard against those dangerous conditions. So, you can contact us about that. When you're at work and you get hurt, that's when workers' compensation comes about, right? We represent workers' compensation victims. And that means, like, your company has a workers' compensation insurance policy because they're responsible for their employees' safety. And if you're working in the course and scope of your employment for someone and you get hurt, you are entitled to getting, lost wages and your medical bills paid for. A lot of times, employers want to refuse to do that. They want to dispute what happened, and that's when you need to call us.
Yes.
Construction accidents. There's a federal law. It's called OSHA, Occupational Safety Health Administration, and that is the governing body for work site safety. So if you are a construction worker, or you're a union worker, or really any type of employee that's going to be doing some type of work, is likely going to interact with an OSHA regulation. I mentioned the building collapse case. There were tons of OSHA violations when the owner of that building that collapsed allowed 2-3 floors
I can imagine.
of an unsupported wall to loom above the Salvation Army. So understanding the OSHA regulations is something that the attorneys at the booth firm are familiar with, and can understand how to employ the violation of those regulations to maximize the compensation for someone that's hurt on a work site. Medical malpractice is another area, right? And I get a lot of calls about medical malpractice. Somebody's doctor pissed them off. That's not medical malpractice.
Yeah.
But a doctor who fails to understand that a biopsy is required when you see, what they think is a shadow on a mammogram or some type of radiograph, they're responsible when 2 years later it turns out that you have cancer, right? I want to back up and just say people understand the principles of the law, because when you feel bad about something, when you feel like something's just not right, likely there has been some negligence, right? When you see somebody speeding down the street and you're like, now I don't see what his odometer says, but I know that he's moving too fast. He's being reckless, or she's being reckless.
Yep.
They're not obeying the laws of the road, and when someone gets hurt because of that, guess what? That driver's insurance policy or insurance company needs to pay out on for the people that they hurt.
Right.
There are so many areas of, and all we've covered really is tort law. I want to quickly shift gears. I mean, COVID-19 has really impacted everyone. It's been a tough year. I want people to know that we're here for you, right? We can help you with respect to employment issues. If your employer laid you off because of COVID, we can help you understand what type of ramifications there may be, or what implications you might have against your employer. There are tons of people that are starting to have been suffering financially and are just really building up the debt. And we have been helping people with bankruptcy because it's really important to keep your credit intact, or even if it's not possible, to understand how to get out of that debt. And bankruptcy might be an option to consider. A lot of people have the misconception that it's going to destroy your future. That's not the case, right? You can call the booth firm to understand your options around that. And I mentioned estate planning and administration. That's one of the most important areas, because not that COVID-19 has necessarily made people at a greater risk of dying than they might have otherwise been, but we've seen the numbers. No time is better than now to start planning for the future and start planning for your end of life event. If you've got children or family or loved ones that you want to be taking care of, you want to make the decision while you're alive. You don't want the state to decide for you, which is what happens if you don't have a will in place, or a plan in place before you die. So those are a few areas that we really get our sleeves rolled up on. We're here to always give you free consultations. You never have to pay us a dime until you decide to hire us. With respect to personal injury cases, we don't get paid until you get paid.
Right. So Quincy, one more question in regards to practice areas, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back on the other side. One more liability that I saw that was interesting that I don't hear very often is liquor liability. Just explain what that is briefly, and just talk about that. That's just not a term that I see that often.
Sure. So a lot of times somebody gets into a car accident and, they see the other driver and say something's not right about that guy or girl, right? You need to tell us that, the attorneys that, because I want to know if that driver has been drinking. The reason I want to know is because if they came from a bar or establishment that was serving alcohol, then that establishment is just as much, if not more, at fault for your accident than the driver themselves. I mean, Derek, there's even cases which are called first-party liability cases, where if you are the drunk driver and you hurt yourself, you can still sue the establishment that overserved you.
Wow.
So some of the elements that you got to understand are that, like establishments that have liquor licenses, that's another really quick tangent I want to go on. If you got to have an attorney that understands who to sue. Some establishments might have the owner of the building, the company that does the maintenance at the building, and then the one random company that actually owns the liquor license, that's the company that is most responsible when someone's overserved. So what is liquor liability? It's when an establishment overserves someone who excessively serves someone who is visibly intoxicated. And what does it mean to be intoxicated? What does it mean to be visibly intoxicated? Those are things that, an attorney at the booth firm is going to be able to understand how to develop through evidence, how to uncover through investigation and diligence. And, if you got witnesses that are saying, hey, the guy was slurring before,
yes,
the bartender served them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we're starting to push a little closer to meeting that element of excessively serving someone who's visibly intoxicated.
Yes.
If you can put together a case like that, you have just opened the door to, a great multiplier of money that's available. Because let's say the guy that left the bar drunk and got in his car only has a $15,000 policy and causes someone to be a paraplegic,
mm-hmm.
which is going to have, the unfortunate, result of requiring millions of dollars. Well, $15,000 isn't going to cut it, but the bar's policy might be $1 million, and there might be an excess layer of insurance coverage of $5 million, and now you're talking about being able to actually maximize somebody's compensation for the injuries that were caused to them by a drunk driver.
Yeah, this is just great information, Quincy. What we're going to do at this time, we'll take a break on the Primetime Power Show right here on Primetime Power Radio, and on the other side, we're going to continue our interview with Quincy E. Booth, Esquire of the Booth Firm. We'll be right back in a few moments. And welcome back to the Primetime Power Show right here live on Primetime Power Radio. We're going to pick up where we left off on our guest interview with Quincy E. Booth. He's an attorney at the Booth Firm. And Quincy, first of all, thanks again for joining us on the Primetime Power Show tonight. What I wanted to do is get your viewpoint or your steps in relation to how a novice should start the process of properly seeking out counsel and how they begin the initial interaction with a lawyer.
So it's really simple, and I can only speak to interacting with us at the Booth Firm. If you are a social media frequenter, you want to look at our handle at the Booth Firm on Instagram, our Facebook page, the Booth Firm. And also you can email us at quincy@theboothfirm.com. You can give us a call at toll-free 800-463-3071. And that's a disclaimer for anyone that's actually been injured in any kind of accident, wants to create a will or a trust, or is seeking bankruptcy help or business law questions, or landlord and tenant help, etc. Also, if you have questions, contact us at any of those numbers or email addresses or Instagram handles for a free consultation. That segues me into the real answer. I mean, you want to get a consultation from a lawyer. If you have any type of question, contact us and we will give you the answer. If we don't have the answer, we are plugged in into a vast network of attorneys that may specialize even that much more into your specific area of need. So we're really the single stop shop for anything related to the law. I mean, our slogan is, we're your first call for everything law. And I want to keep echoing that because we can help guide you.
So Quincy, how should one prepare themselves before they get in touch with you? Is it helpful for them to get documentation together, information, details? Is that a necessary first initial step? Is that helpful?
I would always encourage people to be organized and try to be as prepared as possible. However, I would never want to discourage someone from just jumping out there and reaching out to us because we can shepherd you through the process of understanding what it is that you do need to organize and collect, because that will help us to help you. A lot of times I'm on the phone with a client and, look, Derek, everyone has a saga to tell, right? And I will listen to it. I want to listen to it. However, what I always have to do is kind of take a step back and tell my clients or prospective clients, let me ask you the questions, because I understand what I'm going to need to turn around and communicate to the court or communicate to opposing counsel, right? So let me find out. Let me do the mining for what's relevant through my consultative process.
Absolutely. And that's definitely the best and most effective way to go about it as well. So I noticed you did mention you're on social media as well. And I saw you had a recent video talking about sharing some important tips on how to respond when a matter arises that leads to legal assistance. And just talk about that. Share how important it is being knowledgeable about responding in the proper way when a situation happens to arise up.
Yeah, so I think the video that you're talking about might have to do with your social media output when you're involved in a case.
Yes.
And really what I was trying to communicate was that people are always, this is very general, people are always watching. And if you're involved in an accident, specifically the people that are watching are the surveillance company that the other driver's insurance company went out and hired to follow you, or to go onto your Instagram, Facebook, or any other social media platform to see what you're up to, right? Or what you've been up to since the accident. If you're claiming that, you've suffered some type of physical ailment or harm, the last thing you want to do is be caught, doing some serious physical activity. And I'm not saying, that you want to be deceptive at all. I mean, you always need to be truthful, but why expose yourself to unnecessary, scrutiny or hurt your case because, you're too excited about posting on social media.
Yeah. You're forgetting you're not just talking to your friends and your buddies. You're talking to everyone literally all over the world in regards to your business.
The first response is someone says, "Oh, my account's private." Well, okay, once your lawsuit is initiated and there's a discovery, which is the point at which in your lawsuit you have to kind of exchange information with either side, and questions are being propounded upon you about your life, and you've got to respond under oath. When someone asks if you got a social media account, you've got to say yes. So and you might have to open it up to that. So just be mindful, because someone's always watching. I've had cases where literally my client was going to his high school graduation, and in discovery, it turned out that the insurance company that represented the defendant had sent someone to follow this kid on his graduation day.
Wow.
All the way to, they had photos of him in his cap and gown. So, no place is exempt from being surveilled. And I'm not trying to freak anyone out, but the term "Big Brother is watching" has been around for a long time, even before social media. So why think that that's gone away now?
Yep. So Quincy, just a few more questions. 2021 PA law changes. I know you also put something out there in relation to that. Just is there any key changes that Pennsylvanians should be aware of that would be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, this was a very narrow, idea that I was talking about, which is if you're a driver, there's a new law that's called the Move Over Law. If you're on a roadway and you see an emergency response team or vehicle or flashing lights, a warning sign, anything that suggests, flares, anything that suggests that there's been an accident or an emergency, you are now required to move over to a lane that's not immediately next to the shoulder where that incident happened, so as to get even further out of harm's way. But I thought it was even further interesting that you have to reduce your speed to 20 miles an hour below the posted limit. So, I'm always educating our listeners, our Instagram followers, our constituents and prospective clients, because there is so much under the legal sun, right, to know about, that why not just give it away for free? Why not give as much information away as possible for free? And this was just one little nugget. I mean, I'm always promoting safe driving. I don't want anyone to get into an accident. I want you to know that if you do, you got to call us. We can help maximize the compensation for you.
Definitely. So just a final question, Quincy, in regards to on your personal side, when you're not practicing law, when you're not helping people, what's some of your hobbies, what's some of your interests that people may not know about you?
Yeah, so I like I said before, I love giving back to the community. We just did a holiday giveaway at the Booth Firm where we did 7 days of holiday giveaways. We partnered with local businesses to try to shed some light on their businesses, and graciously they contributed certain services or products for our followers and their followers. I am the vice president and a board member of the Camden Center for Youth Development, which is a social agency that helps at-risk youth. Mm-hmm. So that's some of my community involvement. I love to play golf, although here in Philly you can't do that for several months during the latter part of the year. I've got a chocolate Labrador who's like a year and a half old. He pretty much occupies a lot of my time, and really spending time with friends and family. I mean, it might sound boring, but that's what I enjoy to do.
No, all great stuff, Quincy. So, Quincy, before we head out, and thanks again for being a part of the show, just share your information one more time. We want to make sure our audience know how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one more time, I mean, if you've been involved in any kind of accident or injured, I want you to call 267-231-1195. My toll-free number is 800-463-3071. Follow us at The Booth Firm. Send me an email at quincy@theboothfirm.com, and either get your case started, get a free consultation, or just in general, get some help. We're here to help.
Thank you so much, Quincy, for joining us on the Primetime Power Show on the Primetime Power line, right here on Primetime Power Radio.